The state of Iowa is passing new laws to roll back child labor. Is that okay? Should we be talking about this? We're going to be talking about this. This is The Left Wing. My name is Desmond Price. I am the host of the Independent Thought Podcast. I'm joined by my co host, John Cooper from Counterpoint Politics. The state of Iowa has recently rolled back some child labor laws. This is something that I have been talking about on my own show quite a bit over the last few months while this bill was floating through the state legislature, but now it's officially a law. Let's talk about exactly what this law says, and then we're going to dive into our feelings about it. So, first and foremost, this allows children ages 14 to 17 to work in previously prohibited jobs as long as they are part of what they call an approved training program. So the jobs include working in slaughterhouses, meat packing plants, mining, operating power driven metal forming, punching or shearing machines, operating band and circular saws, guillotine shears and paper balers, and roofing and demolition work. Now, originally, this bill actually shielded companies from any liability if a child were to become sick, injured, or killed in the process of working in one of these dangerous jobs. But they were able to get that slightly amended in the final version of this bill to where a child can claim workers' comp if they were to become sick or injured. And if a child were to die, a parent can collect some benefits for the fact that their child did in fact perish on the job.
Oh, goody.
Also, the fun keeps going. The violations, if a company with how lax these laws already are, if a company were to violate any of the lax laws there, they'll only be fined a maximum of up to $10,000, and the state can actually go in and reduce that fine or waive that fine altogether. So, John, is it okay to be rolling back child labor laws?
Well, this is a tough one, Desmond, but I'm gonna go with no. And I genuinely, it's such a hard one for me to understand anyone who's on the other side of this debate. Like, there's the pure free market economics school of thought of like, hey, if the labor can be supplied, it should be supplied, right? We shouldn't create an artificial restriction on the labor market. To which I say, that's not the economic reason for these child labor laws. Like, the economic reason for these child labor laws is that kids should be in school. We should be educating the children, increasing the future value of their labor so that they are more productive for society over the course of their entire lives, completely forgetting about the moral implications of signing a law that's going to kill children. Like, that's the reason why we have this from a practical perspective. By taking them out of the school system, and even if you're not taking them out of the school system, having them work instead of study and do their homework and get educated, you are hurting all of society. You are stopping them from doing what we should have kids doing, which is making themselves better. And the only person who is benefiting from that is the owner of the mine that you're sending the child into. Like, it doesn't make sense why we would steal from the people of this country the future value of that person's labor and just give it to a mine owner. Like, it doesn't make sense economically, and I want you to talk about how bullshit it is morally.
I mean, first of all, I will say that we did cover this subject on my Under the Radar series. This was like a few months ago. So I'm going to repeat a couple of those things now. I apologize, but I know that quite a few people didn't see it. So first and foremost, I want to just state what the objections might be. You know, for somebody who's like a parent in Iowa, or the politicians as they sort of float this through the media and try to make their case about why this isn't a big deal, they'll say, oh, well, these children, they'll have permission from their parents, obviously, and that they'll be a part of a training program, right? And obviously they'll be trained better. So you don't have to worry about the fact that these jobs are so dangerous. And the first thing I want to say to those really terrible fake objections is you could make that argument for a child at any age, legitimately. Take it to its logical conclusion. You can say that about an 8-year-old, really, 7-year-old, no problem. They're in a training program. They got permission from their parents. It's honestly a slap in the face to what I thought. I like every time I think America can't do something that's even more gross, they find a way to do so. We moved away from these of children working in places like meat packing plants and mines back in the 1930s. Like I assumed we were way past this, but somehow we're bringing it back and trying to fetishize it again, or try to like make it, prominent again. Because unfortunately, Iowa is not the only state to introduce this thing and to also pass laws like this. And this is being sponsored, actually a shout out to More Perfect Union. They did a great cover of this where they showed about how there were corporations who are going into different state houses around the country supporting these legislations because they want to find a workforce that is cheaper, right? And that's why laws like this get made, because the corporations of the world are able to influence these state legislatures into allowing them to have a cheaper workforce, because the corporations of our country only know one word. And I'm going to say this all the time, so we have to just get used to it, that they only know the word more. That's all they know, just more. They just want more. And they can't get more by paying people more. So you have to find people who will work for less, and children work for less, John. They just do. And it is so disgusting. The fact that at the same time, these same politicians are talking about we have to find a way to get any mention of a person who's LGBTQ out of books because we have to protect children, but then we have to go send them to the meatpacking plant later.
Hey, think about this. Children work for less. Let's even say that that's a valuable thing to have, right? The cheaper labor. Let's just assume that. You know who else works for less? Immigrants. You know who is morally, I can't say objectively morally, but like 99% of people would agree should be working in a meatpacking plant or a mine over a child, any adult. So like, if you're saying we shouldn't bring in immigrant labor to fill in those jobs that apparently need to be filled in, and we should instead send our own children to go into the mines, like, what is this insanity? That doesn't make any sense. Like, why, even if you didn't care about that morally, why would you want a fucking kid doing this job when you can have an adult doing it? It again, a lot of people, it's because the kid is white, and a lot of people, it's because I don't give a shit. I just want to give the corporations more money. Like, that's the case. It's such a, you can microscope in onto this subject and try and make a good argument for it. Like you just said, like the parents are allowing it, whatever. But if you just zoom out even the tiniest little bit, why are the parents allowing it? Because they need the money, and of course they need the money. So like, this is one of those issues when I was growing up, like I couldn't quite wrap my head around. I was like, I used to be much more libertarian back in high school. And like, I was like, well, all these, like this child labor going on making the iPhones, right? And it's like, well, that's bad. But also, if those children aren't working because for the shits and gigs, they're working because their family needs the money, so like, if we stop them from being able to work, the family's just going to get hurt. And the jump that a lot of Americans can't make is, well, that's the fucking problem. That's the thing that should be addressed, that the family needs child labor to survive. That's the problem that we should be addressing, not they need some money, so let the child work. Like, if we're living in a society where families need 14-year-olds to be going into the mines in order to survive, that's a shitty fucking ass society. I don't want to be actively a part of it. And no one really should. If my fucking tomatoes are 2 cents more expensive because a grown-ass adult picked them, I'm all right with that. Like, it's absurd to think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that point up, because that really is the crux of this issue, right? If you are sending children into dangerous situations because you're a parent and you need the money, then we need to be talking about why you're in a situation in the first place, about why you felt the need to send your child into a meatpacking plant, into a slaughterhouse, into doing demolition work. And also, again, talking about zooming out a little bit, I just would hope that for the people who might tune into this, who maybe you're on the right, or maybe you're a little more center leaning, and you're talking about things in other parts of our discourse about like, oh, how we got to be protecting children more in society. How do you line up that belief system while also watching this take place? I just don't, because on one hand, I understand why the corporations are doing it because they have no soul. They don't care. Because honestly, like we're saying, oh, how could they do this to kids in America? They're doing it to kids in Thailand right now, kids in Bangladesh, kids in China. I mean, they don't actually care about, putting children in dangerous situations. They're doing that in other parts of the world in this global economy that we have, but we unfortunately we can't really impact what's happening in those countries, but we can talk about what's happening to children in this country. And we agreed a long time ago that we don't want children working in dangerous situations, and we need to be protecting them from these companies who are trying to abuse them, trying to put them in these dangerous situations. Like, a child should not be doing demolition work. We shouldn't have to relitigate this. We shouldn't have to. This shouldn't even be a subject that we're discussing today. And the fact that we are is an indictment on our damn system.
Not just discussing it's part of the potential discourse, but discussing it because it's a damn law that was actually passed.
Yes.
Like, it's not even just a discourse. This is our reality now.
Yeah. And this is what we need to be constantly coming back to, is how has our society kind of been plummeting to this point, to where now there are laws being passed pushing children into the workforce into this manner.
Yeah, and the other thing, like the other argument that is always made with this, like, oh no, kids should work. Kids, it teaches them, responsibility and job preparedness and all that. And like,
I mean, at McDonald's,
that's one of those arguments where you argue one thing, but it's completely irrelevant to the subject that we're talking about. I agree with you. Kids should work. Kids should get a job. I had a job as soon as I turned 14, and I didn't stop throughout ever, and I think that was valuable. I went work, I did landscape, I got my worker's permit. It was a fulfilling thing for me, because I was like, oh, I got my worker permit, I can go get my own money, and I went and did landscaping. It was great. I went to work for Best Buy. It was terrible, and but I had jobs all throughout high school. I had jobs throughout college. Like, it's valuable for kids to get that working experience. I 100% agree with you. It doesn't have to be in a goddamn demolition field. Like, it doesn't have to be in a mine. Like, that's dumb. There's millions of jobs out there that like kids can do, like in the service industry, in being a retail cashier, being whatever, doing landscaping, cutting grass, whatever it is, that is completely normal child jobs that will give them all of that shit that you're saying that this will give them. They just aren't risking their lives to do it. And working, the other thing is like work requirements, like not letting them work 6 hours on a school night. Like, that's affecting their schooling and their education. And it's like, why? It makes no sense. There's no good reason.